Well, here we are. We're back working on this generally out of control project of ours that we started here a while back, and we struggled to get parts and we struggled to get things finished, and I think we've actually got everything together now. We finally got our arms we got all of our arms from High Lifter, and we've sent them off and had them coated in a really pretty ghost gray. High gloss ghost gray looks awesome, and so we're excited now. It's actually time to start assembling this machine, and so I want to walk you through some of the things that we're going to do here. So I can say very surely that it's always a little bit of a wrestling match to get these differentials to fit right back in where they came from, but here we are, reinstalling the differential on this General, and we'll get this done and we'll start installing the suspension. So we're going to finish getting this differential reinstalled here. We're going to finish driving the drift pin through the input. So we're good there. So now we'll tighten up the differential bolts, and that'll be back in place. We're ready to start installing the A-arms on this thing. So we've got these arms. What we discovered on this, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, what we discovered is that the front end of this XP General is actually really kind of a derivative of a Turbo S, and so we're actually able to use Turbo S front arms on this thing. That High Lifter makes a Turbo S replacement arm, which is going to bring us out to that that ideal 72-inch width, and then on top of that we're going to have our portals, so we'll have a little bit more width on in addition to that. So but these arms are super beefy. Now they're all coated, they look great, and High Lifter provides these great looking rod ends. These are a cast steel rod end, and I mean, these things are bulletproof. These are really beefy. So we're going to be putting these in there. When you're assembling these arms, it's a little bit more than just getting them from the powder coater and bolting them onto the car. So all the bushings and all the Delron bushings have got to go back in. All the spacers have got to go back in. All your I don't know what they call these, crush washers that go into the ends of the and all the pivot points, your pivot tube washers. Those have all got to be assembled. Everything's got to be put together. We're going to put some heavy duty all balls racing ball joints in this car, so we'll be installing those today and getting these arms ready to go. And hopefully by the end of the day here, we'll have some arms hanging on this car, and boy, it won't be long, we'll have it on wheels. Basically going to run a little sanding bit around these, make sure that there's no powder coat residue in these journals where these ball joints are going to ride. We want that to be perfectly smooth. Like I said, we're using these all balls racing ball joints. These are heavy duty models. These are actually an adjustable ball joint, and as they start to wear, you can actually adjust them and take the slack out. Oh, when you're installing these ball joints, there's a couple of different ways to do it. A lot of guys will tell you that you got to use a press. Well, the problem with using an A-arm like this in a press is that there's a lot going on if you just by yourself. It's kind of tough to hold the arm in the press and get the ball joint in the journal square, and then get whatever you're using for a press thing on here, and still save all the powder coats. So what we found is that it's actually really not that difficult to just tap these things in with a hammer. Once you get them in started straight, they actually go in pretty good. Use a socket. We use a socket on here that will. You don't want the socket to be bigger than the journal, and you don't want it to fall off, but you want to get on that main face there on that ball joint, and gonna work that thing in there. It takes a few good whacks, but ultimately go down into their journal holes, and you'll see on this side here now you'll get a nice little ring groove. That's where your snap ring is going to go. Ring is in place. Make sure that it's in all the way tight all the way around. Looks like it is. So there, we're good to go. And so now these have got a grease cert. They get screwed into the back here. Now, like I said, these are adjustable, and the way you adjust these, I'll open up another one here and show you. If these become loose and they start to wear, you can actually take out some of that slack. Let's see if we can not lose the grease zerk on this one. I'm going to have to crawl around on my hands and knees to find that other one that fell on the floor. So there's a ring in here that actually has a pin that captures a pin inside of one of these. Well, if you take this snap ring off, this pin will come out, and then you can now you can actually adjust this, and you screw this collar down and actually tighten this up. You'd go to the next spot, put the pin back in, and but you know they're pre-adjusted from the factory, so now we'll just pump them full of grease and they should be good for a while. But as they do start to wear, you can adjust these, tighten them up a little bit, get that slack out of there, keep everything nice and quiet. After we put our ball joints in, we need to install these rod ends, and you know, you've got a large one and a small one. The large one goes towards the back of the A-arm, and the small one goes up in the front of the A-arm. So what we're going to want to do is on these rod ends, you really want to use some good quality anti-seize on the threads, because moisture will work its way up in there, and a big shaft this large in there with a little bit of rust, and man, you probably never get that thing out of there. So we're going to put some anti-seize on it, and we're going to run these in. And we got from High Lifter, we got a predetermined starting point, because you can, with these things, you can actually adjust your camber by adjusting the depth of these rod ends in the bore. So this is a starting point. It should get us pretty close. We may have to pull the arms out again and readjust after we get the wheels and tires on there. We'll measure and see where we're at, but this should give us a pretty good starting point. We're going to go ahead and install a grease zerk on the bottom of this ball joint, and we're going to just snug it down here with a 7mm socket. And these lower arms are they're ready to install in the car, so we'll set these aside and we'll start on those uppers. Same thing here. We're going to install another ball joint. I'm going to go ahead and make sure these journals are nice and clean, so they don't have any burrs in them. We don't want that ball joint hanging up in here when we try and put it in. So make sure that this surface is perfectly smooth. That feels good. All right. Same thing. I'll drop this ball joint in here. Guide it in, see if it starts nice and straight. So we still got to put the bushings in these A-arms here, and our pivot tubes and our little crush washer things. So on these little ones here, they're going to use a little snap ring that actually goes into the groove. On the factory ones, they only use one snap ring, but on these High Lifter models, they actually use two snap rings, one on each side of the bushing. So there's a groove built into the factory arm that holds the bushing on one side, and then the snap ring holds it in on the other. So in our case, we're going to have to use two of these snap rings, but we got the one in there. And I always like to coat these Delron bushings. I always like to coat them with a little bit of grease when we put them in there. Doesn't really make them go in any easier, but as things settle in, it might tend to keep the suspension just a little bit quieter down the road. Again, most of this stuff is pretty zero tolerance and zero clearance, so we're going to just tap these Delron bushings into place here. You'll hear when it gets in there, and you'll actually be able to feel that little groove in there. So for the bushings on the large end, there's actually a stop built into the pivot tube here that stops this bushing when it gets in all the way, and you'll feel it as you tap it in. Never want to tap them in too hard, but if if they're straight, they usually go right in. Actually hear it when it hits the bottom. So you're good to go there. Now we're going to put a pivot tube inside here. Same thing with these pivot tubes. I always like to coat them with a little bit of grease. Makes them easier to install. Keeps your suspension nice and quiet. Oof. All right, so that is in. Now we're going to take two of these little crush washers, and these have got nice little O-rings on them. A little coat of grease never hurts on these. Pop into place here. Always have the beveled side out. Makes it slip into the pocket on the suspension a little easier. These smaller pivot tubes, actually the pivot tube is actually built into the crush washer, so these actually just fit right into place here, just like so. And that arm is ready to go. Got your ball joint in, got your crush sleeves, or your Delron bushings in, your pivot tubes, and your crush washers. So this one is ready to install. So the nice thing is that you know, even though you got your stuff back from the powder coater, you're ready to get your car on the wheels and go, and you've got about 2 hours worth of this kind of stuff to do before you can do it. So be patient and take your time, make sure you get all the parts in right, and let's get this finished up and throw some arms on this car. So earlier today, before we started prepping our arms to get them installed, we reinstalled the front differential on this car. So you know, it's a little bit of a wrestling match always to get that thing in. Remember, we had our winch propped up, we had it kind of pulled up with some straps out of the way. We dismounted the winch so we had a little more working space in there. And anyway, we dropped the front end back in there. We ran the drift pin back through the yoke here at the input shaft on the differential. Always remember, you got to plug it back in. So we got that electrical plug back in. We still have to run a vent line off of the top of it, but that's easily enough done. And yeah, so our front differential is all back installed. Remember, we've got our shock therapy steering rack in here, so that's why we had that front differential out. And now that that's installed, the front differential's in. Looks like we don't have any clearance issues. Everything fits nice and tidy. And man, we're ready to start bolting some arms on this thing now. So when I pre-fit this suspension, I was pretty amazed at how well these arms fit in. I mean, you know, you put your rod ends in and set them to the right dimension, and man, I'll tell you what, everything seems to just kind of fall into place. There you go, so that's in. And we're not going to tighten everything up right yet because we want everything to be free as we put it all together, so we want to be able to use, don't want to have any bindings. So, but we'll get the nuts started on there. And heck, here's your lower arms. So like I said, we are, you know, we're using a Turbo S front suspension. So because of that, we're also using Turbo S front axles. So we've got a brand new set of All Balls Racing Turbo S front axles here. And we're gonna stick them in this thing, and we're gonna get our portal plate installed. So we're ready to install our portal here pretty quick. You always want to put a little bit of anti-seize on those axle splines when you put them in there. Make sure that those things are galled up on there. We found a little groove here, and we tapped that ball joint on through there. So now that's on there good and solid. Now we're going to work on the bottom one here. See if it cooperates. Again, you've got to line up this groove with that bolt hole. So a little bit of a balancing act. All right, tap that into place, and now we've got our axle in place. We've got our portal plate in place. We got our pinch bolts in place. And now we're about ready to bolt the portal on this side. So that's up next. We're gonna get the portals bolted on this baby. So we've been clicking along here on the general project, and if you notice here, we've got our portal boxes installed on the front. I think last time we were kind of wrestling with the portal plates, getting those in place. We got our ball joint pins in. We threw some grease in them. These ball joints work great. These all balls, heavy duty ball joints, are working great. We got our axle shafts in. We got our axle shaft nuts all tight. We've got our brake caliper mounts in here. That's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about that today. So, you know what? I'm going to wrap up here. We're tightening up some of the suspension bolts here, and then basically the front is, I'm not going to say it's ready for wheels, but it's getting pretty close. So we got a couple little things. We noticed here that looks like our sway bar link is actually going to fit perfect. Our little sway bar link is going to fit perfect here on our, these high lifter arms come with a sway bar mount for the Turbo S. Well, this is the Turbo S front end. Looks like the sway bar is going to mount right up. So that's one thing we're not going to have to modify. The back's a little different story. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you know what? Let's get some of this stuff all tightened up, and let's keep moving on here. I started working through this whole project. We're getting the back arms installed, and we're getting the axles in. We're getting ready to hang the portal plates on the rear, and we've got a little bit of a clearance issue with our stock sway bar location. There wasn't really a provision on these arms for a sway bar, but you know what? We've got some ideas here. I've got a couple ideas in my head, and you know what? We're going to move forward on that here a little bit later. But right now, I think we're just going to remove this sway bar and get it out of the way for the moment, and that'll be another little segment for another day. So as you can see, we got our arms in place here, and it looks as though on the front, for the front sway bar, it looks like the provisions that are on the high lifter arms are going to work just perfect. We just got to put the links in there, but it looks like we're going to have the front sway bar. It looks like it's going to work out perfect. So you know what? We're working our way around this thing, and things are coming together. Getting all our hubs put together, and get all our brake rotors installed. We pressed in all of our lug studs, and now we're applying a little bit of Loctite to every one of these bolts. We're going to bolt the rotors on to the hubs, and then we will get going on installing the portals on the car. You see, these rotors are quite a bit bigger than the factory rotors on the General. So with the larger tires, bigger wheels, this should really help with the stopping power on this machine. So high lifter gives us a pretty good pile of bolts to put this whole portal system together, and so we're gonna go and see if we can sort through all this and see where it all goes. But a bunch of big bolts, bunch of big washers, and a couple portals. And you know what? We're actually going to read the directions on this one, so keep in touch. So what we discovered here is that the Turbo S 4-seater's got a considerably larger front brake pad or front brake caliper than what any of the other RZRs have. So our thought was, these huge tires, we have bigger calipers because of the portal kit. The overall weight of this vehicle, it sure would be nice to have a little bit bigger brakes. So by using the brackets that High Lifter makes for the Turbo S, the portals are the same front and rear, so there's no reason why we can't use the front brakes on the rear as well. So we're actually converting this whole car over. We're going to run all four corners. We're going to run the Turbo S front brake calipers on all four corners. So I'll show you here how we convert those. We've got a bracket that holds the caliper in place, and then there's another bracket that actually goes onto the portal, and that's what the whole mess bolts to. And you know what? Let's get this done. Let's get some brakes on this thing, and man, I'm excited about that. This is gonna be fun. There's a factory brake caliper right here, and it's got a big mud scraper that goes on there, and this is actually the mounting bracket that Polaris uses. It mounts to the spindle on the front of the Turbo S. Well, we're going to need to convert this over. We're going to need to get this stuff onto the new brackets. So first thing we want to do is we want to take this apart. We're going to take this mud scraper mounting bracket out. we're going to take these out. These out of the way. And we're going to take the caliper apart and take it off. Remember, we got these little rubber boots here, and these protect that shaft. That way the caliper can keep moving, doesn't get mud inside there, and keep the brakes from moving freely on the caliper, because it is a floating caliper. So I'm going to keep those intact. Put it out of there. All right, next thing we got to do is we got to pull these. We got to pull the brake pads out. They come equipped with brake pads, so we're going to get those out of there. Might have to pry them just a little bit. They've got a little stainless steel, I don't know, what do you call it, a doohickey in here that holds these brakes in place. So we want to get these little stainless steel pads out of here. We're going to move those over onto the new brackets. We've got our brake pads out. And pull these out. There's one on each side. And what these do is these keep the brakes from chattering because these are aluminum. So we're going to keep the brakes from chattering in there, and also protects. These are made out of stainless steel, as opposed to the brakes riding on the aluminum. So you get a lot more life out of them. So I'm going to take these, and we're going to put those stainless steel clips into the new caliper brackets. And all right, so we held our tongue just right, and we think we got our caliper put together here. The brakes are not in the right spots, but we can fix that, we think. Okay, now we have another one ready to go. So those are our two brakes for the right side. Let's get that portal installed on the back, and we'll get these brakes hung on there and see what they look like. Put our axle caps back in place here. We've tightened up our axle nut in here. Put our axle cap back in place. We've got a nice plastic gasket in there to keep water and mud out. Yeah, we don't do mud. That's right, I forgot. We don't do mud. They do, though. They do a lot of mud. I'm going to make sure that you remember to put this on before you put the rotor and the hub on, because otherwise you can't get to it. So kind of an important thing. To put the brake rotor and the hub on this thing, and it's got a little taper to it. So we're going to make sure that we put some anti-seize on these splines and on this taper, because we want to get it off. We want to have to pound it off. So a little bit of anti-seize here on this taper should make it easy to get off if we need to take it off. Now that's a bolt, my friend. All right, put that on there. Nice lock washer, and a lot of ugga-duggas on that one. That's a big one. I don't think I got the muscle to break that one. So, however, because the average redneck does not have this in his toolbox, this is a 46 millimeter socket that they include with the kit. Impact on heavy duty, and let her rip. Let me give you a nice cotter pin spot there. I discovered here that the brackets, like I say, we decided to do this after the fact, and I don't really have the right bolts for this, but it's made a 12 millimeter bolt. I just need a couple little longer bolts here to bolt these on. So we'll get these calipers bolted up here shortly. I gotta dig through my stuff and find a couple longer bolts. So we'll get that taken care of, and let's move on to the back and get the portals installed. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do here to do these rear portals is we're gonna install the rear caliper brackets. The caliper brackets that come with the portals originally are for the stock small calipers, and we'll talk about that in a second. But these These are for the Turbo S front calipers, and because the portals themselves are all the same, you can use this. You can use these big brackets on any of the portals. So in this case, we're going to install them so they face the rear of the vehicle, where the front ones, the calipers, face the front of the vehicle. So we're going to put this on. We're going to go over there and we're going to slip this. We're going to slip this portal into place, and we're going to keep moving forward here. Coated our axle stub with anti-seize again, so make sure those splines are protected. So we're going to take this beast and work its way on here. Line up the splines. Slide that in. Get a couple nuts started on it. So this is a interior nut here. We've already put some some anti-seize on that axle, so get that in there. You can't put a cotter pin on these because it's a internal nut, so we always put a little Loctite on these here, so this is what holds your axle in place. It's a 30mm nut. Progress here today. Monster nut. So we're in the process of putting these brake calipers on this General, and you know, I told you, I said that we're going to do an improvement, right? And you're going to use this Turbo S brake. I just want to show you what that really means. So this is the factory brake caliper on a 4-seat General. 2 pistons, 2 little tiny pistons, very, very small little brake caliper. That is the brake caliper from the front end of a 4-seat Turbo S. It's a triple piston, much bigger pads, whole bigger unit. This is gonna make a huge, huge difference on this thing, especially with the larger rotors. It's gonna make a huge difference. Now we're gonna have to make some custom brake lines on this, obviously, because this is not quite gonna make the trip over here. But so I've actually got some longer brake lines, and we'll dig into that, and you know, we'll show you that. We'll route those down here and get them all fastened up. They give you some nice holes on the brackets to mount your brake lines and stuff, so should be pretty easy. But I'm gonna get my hands dirty with brake fluid probably tomorrow. So we change over to these giant calipers all the way around. Had a couple questions as to whether or not the master cylinder is actually going to is still going to work, and the short answer is I don't know. But I think it will work, and if it doesn't work, then you know, we'll address that accordingly. There are some options for some larger master cylinders out there, and it shouldn't be too hard to figure out. But you know, we're going to try this stock one first, and you know, if we get it all bled out, I think it's actually going to work, and I think we'll have some pretty good brakes on this thing. So stay tuned for that, and we'll let you know how that all works out. But it's coming up, man. We'll have this thing on wheels pretty quick.